Welcome in. It's Wednesday morning. Wow, it's not Thursday. It's Wednesday morning here on Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you until 7 o'clock as we embark on another great day of college football conversation here on Jocks, getting you ready for week 5 of the college football season. And I mean, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when you had just a fantastic slate of games early on in the season. But I think this weekend coming up, if you've looked ahead, marked your calendars, probably the best weekend of college football that we're going to have the entire season. So I know a lot of people very excited. I know some people, maybe you have prior commitments, heaven forbid. I know some people, it's the fall, and we always joke about it, but some people probably going to be at a wedding this weekend, things like that. And I just, send my condolences to anybody that won't be sitting on a couch or inside of a stadium this Saturday, because it's going to be just an absolutely fantastic slate of games that you have coming your way. Not just here with Alabama and Auburn. Obviously, those are going to be two of the bigger games with Alabama, Georgia, and Auburn and Texas A&M, but really just all around the country. It's going to be just such an exciting Saturday of college football, and we are just a matter of days away from all of that action being here for us. So we're going to dive into some of the games today. Want to take a longer look at Georgia and Alabama because we haven't gotten to take kind of a deep dive into that matchup yet. And I know for many of you, for many of us, just in general, right, college football fans, this may be the most anticipated game each and every year. And so it's great that we get it in the regular season. We have the last couple of years. We're also going to get it next year in the regular season. If you missed that yesterday, but yeah, very excited to take a deeper dive into that game. And we've got some other big news around the world of college football outside of the SEC to get to as well today. But I did want to start off, and we talked about this earlier in the week. We talked about it last week, and that was the fact that you had the permanent opponents revealed for all of the SEC teams now that we're moving to the 9-game conference schedule. And we're not going to go over that because we've talked about that time and time again now. And we had that information at the end of last week for Alabama and Auburn, what that was going to ultimately look like. And so now we know who the SEC opponents are going to be for Alabama, Auburn, and everybody for the next 4 years, because that's how the permanent opponent cycle is going to work, right? Every 4 years, they're going to reassess the schedule, maybe shuffle some things up a little bit. And I know a lot of people were worried, with Alabama, for example. So with their permanent opponents being Auburn, Tennessee, and Mississippi State, a lot of people were saying, oh, so they're not going to play LSU anymore. Oh, no, you're going to play LSU. Now, you're not going to play them every single year, but you're going to play them 2 out of every 4 years. And the idea is that every 4 years, you will play every SEC opponent at least one time at your stadium and at their stadium. Now, obviously, the permanent opponents, you're going to play more than that, but the idea is that you will play every single team at their venue and at home in a 4-year period because, for example, we've talked about this a lot, right? Texas A&M and Georgia have never played in the regular season, and Texas A&M's been in the conference for 13 years. That should never happen. And so it's not going to happen now because they're going to adjust those things and they're going to change some of them. So I did want to dive into, if you missed it, the SEC opponents for both Alabama and Auburn moving forward here over the next handful of seasons, because there's some tough draws in here for both of these programs, no doubt about it. But that's what you would expect in the Southeastern Conference, of course. So I did mention it just a moment ago, but we'll start with Alabama. So you are going to get Georgia again next year. So you're going to get 3 straight years of that game in the regular season. They won't play in 2027, but in 2026, Alabama will play Georgia. So the SEC slate for Alabama next year, and we don't know the dates or anything of these yet, just who's going to be on the schedule. So at home, you're going to get Auburn, Georgia, South Carolina, and Texas A&M. On the road, you're going to go to Mississippi State, Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and LSU. So there you go. For all the people worried about they're not going to play LSU every year, they're not, but they will play them next year. So that's going to be certainly a tough stretch there. Auburn, Georgia, A&M, Tennessee, LSU. Who knows what to really make of those other programs next year, but that's going to be your 2026 slate. Then in 2027, you're going to have at home Mississippi State, Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, and Texas. So Texas is going to come back to Bryant-Denny Stadium in 2027. And then on the road, you're going to have Auburn, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. 2028, you're going to have Auburn, Kentucky, LSU, and Vanderbilt at home. And you're going to go to Mississippi State, Tennessee, South Carolina, A&M, and Georgia. So there's Georgia again. So you'll have a year off between those matchups. And then in 2029, for Alabama, you're going to have Mississippi State, Tennessee, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Oklahoma at home. And you're going to go to Auburn, Florida, Missouri, and Texas. So there is your look ahead for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I'll just point this out now because I know some people were pointing it out on social media last night. But for 2028 currently, unless something changes with the schedule, this is going to be 11 of Alabama's 12 games in 2028. They will play on the road at Georgia, at Tennessee, at A&M, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, and they're going to Oklahoma State. And then at home, they're going to have LSU, Auburn, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Ohio State.
I'd say that's one of the tougher schedules in college football in 2028. But also, that's a different Oklahoma State team because they'll be under new.
Well, I was about to say, I think that matchup looked a little more enticing when you scheduled it a handful of years ago than it does today. But yeah, we'll get into that. But yes, as Damian said, if you missed that, going to be some changes there for Oklahoma State in the future. But that's your look at Alabama, what they have coming up. So again, you're going to get Georgia again next year, so you're going to get to see that again in the regular season. But then they're going to take a year off, and they'll play Georgia again in 2028. You're going to get Texas in 2027 and 2029. So I know a lot of people will be excited for that. So yeah, that's kind of what you have looking ahead, and it's going to be, again, as I said, it's going to be difficult for everyone. No one's got what I would consider to be an easy draw in any of these situations. All right, so let's move on to Auburn. What's Auburn's future SEC schedule going to look like? So for next year, you're going to get at home Arkansas, Florida, LSU, and Vanderbilt. I know a lot of people excited about the LSU Tigers coming back to Jordan-Hare because it's been a minute. And then on the road next year, this is tough for Auburn. At Alabama, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, and Mississippi State. That's very difficult. I think we would all agree that that's going to be a very difficult draw next year for the Auburn Tigers. But coming up after that in 2027, the good news is a lot of this shifts, and you have a pretty favorable home schedule in 27. So you're going to have Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Texas A&M at home, and you're going to go on the road to Kentucky, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Texas. So a little bit more of a manageable, home and road versus road slate there in 2027 for Auburn. Then in 2028, you're going to get Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Vandy at home, and you're going to have to go on the road to Alabama, Florida, Georgia, LSU, and Arkansas. So again, a little bit of a tough road draw there for you if you're Auburn. And then in 2029, you're going to get Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri, and Texas at home. And you're also going to go to Oklahoma, South Carolina, A&M, and Vanderbilt. So that's just a look ahead what the first cycle of this new 9-game conference schedule is going to look like for the SEC. Because, again, in 2030, they're going to have shuffled some things around and go back. And for competitive balance, you're going to mix some things up because you don't want, right? Let's say that, who knows? Maybe Kentucky becomes the best program in college football in the next 4 years. And, maybe you need to go and reassess some people's schedule because right now Kentucky looks like a pretty easy matchup. And then you find out you have, I don't know, LSU, Kentucky, and Georgia as your permanent opponents, and they're the 3 best teams in the country, right? So they're going to shuffle these things around. That's the way it's going to work. But good to have a look ahead and kind of know what we're going to get ourselves into. But I think a lot of things for us to be excited about. And hopefully people now are reassured that, okay, maybe if one of your favorite matchups went away from a permanent basis, you're still going to get to see it more often than not. It's not really going anywhere, just, maybe not annual anymore.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the SEC as a whole, it's extremely competitive. And I think that Saturday, week in and week out, you're going to see some pretty good football games as far as the SEC is concerned. But, again, a lot of this is just projecting the next, 3-4 years. There's no telling what could happen. But I do think that when you look at conference play and then you start tying in certain things like college football playoff outlook that, there may be some years where a 3-loss team may be in the top 10 of the in the nation because of just how difficult of a conference schedule that you play, and also kind of who you play in the non-con is going to matter a little bit too. So I think all in all, for the SEC, it's a good look because we're going to get competitive matchups pretty much every single Saturday.
Yeah, and I mean that's why again, I think that's why we were all so excited about moving to 9 conference games is yes, it's going to be more difficult, but you're going to get some really really incredible matchups, and especially when you factor in what you're going to get having to play at least one Power 4 non-conference team every year. I mean, you're going to have we just listed out for you Alabama in 2028, right? You might have one cupcake game that year. Every other game is going to be against Power 4 competition, and that's the way that I think the game should go is you should try to challenge yourselves and have that level of competition. So, very exciting stuff there on the horizon around the SEC for Alabama and Auburn. Certainly going to be tested, but then again, who's not in the SEC on a weekly basis? So, that's what your schedules are going to look like for the next 4 years across the Southeastern Conference. But we got to get rid of, got to get through this year, right? Before we can go ahead and start worrying about all of that. And we have a fantastic slate of games coming up this weekend. So we're going to break down Alabama, Georgia for you coming up here in just a little bit. But we had some big injury news in college football yesterday. Some, in fact, impacting Alabama. We had some other teams around the SEC, and Damian mentioned it, but some big changes on the way for one program in the state of Oklahoma. We'll tell you what's going on, what the future holds there next on Morning Jocks. 6:16. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here on your Wednesday morning. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you as we are getting you set for what should be just an incredible weekend of college football, maybe the very best weekend that we'll have all season long. So we certainly want to take advantage of that and not miss a single second if you can help it. So I know a lot of people probably going to be maybe making a road trip to Texas in the College Station area, particularly. Maybe some of you driving over to Athens. But I know a lot of you are going to be here sitting on your couch for at least 12 hours probably on Saturday. And that's the way that it should be on Saturdays in the fall, right? That's what we live for here in college football country. And we appreciate you choosing us as the capital of the college football world. So let's get into some injury news that we have going on around the country. Obviously, you have a situation in Tuscaloosa that was very scary yesterday as the news came down about Jamarian Latham, who was injured yesterday in practice, dealing with a neck injury, which is never something you want to hear when you're on a football field. And there's a statement released by Kalen DeBoer yesterday. I'm just going to read you the statement now on Jamarian Latham. It says, quote, "During today's practice session, Jamarian Latham sustained a neck injury. He was transported to UAB St. Vincent's Hospital for further evaluation and care. We are pleased to report that he has full feeling and motion and is currently undergoing a thorough medical assessment to determine the next steps in his recovery. Our top priority is Jamarian's health and well-being. We are in close contact with his family and the medical team and will continue to support him in every way possible. Further updates will be provided as appropriate." So that's the situation there with Jamarian Latham. So obviously thoughts and prayers with him. Anytime you hear about a neck injury on a football field, you start to get worried, and rightfully so. But knowing that he has full range of motion and all of those facilities seem to be okay, that's certainly a positive there for Alabama. So we'll keep you up to date, see what's going on there. And as you would expect, Quay Rousseau, Yanze Pierre, those are the kind of guys there that you'll probably see a little bit more of with Jamarian Latham not being available this Saturday against Georgia. But yeah, prayers up there for Jamarian Latham and him getting back to action rather quickly. We had some big injury news from another SEC team yesterday, and this is, this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be a real challenge for the Oklahoma Sooners. There's no way around it. But if you missed the news yesterday, John Mateer, their Heisman contender quarterback. I know some people probably cringe when you hear that, but it's true. I mean, wherever you looked, he was in the top 2 or 3 of Heisman odds before this news broke yesterday. But it's announced that he has broken a bone in his hand and is going to have surgery and miss. It's expected about a month of the season now for Mr. John Mateer. Is an injury he sustained in the Auburn game, but he stayed in there and managed to will his Sooners to victory. I know, some people want to debate that, but I mean, I think we can all agree. In SEC play, you go in there, you break your hand early. I believe it was in the first quarter when that happened, when that injury happened, and then you go back out there and you're still able to find a way to win. Yeah, I think maybe some people went, oh, maybe that's why he didn't look as good as everyone talked about. He had a broken hand, but still impressive what he was able to do there. But this is a big hit for Oklahoma, no doubt about it. And you look at their schedule, it does help out a little bit that they have a bye this week, and then they have Kent State. So that kind of gives you a little wiggle room there for a couple of weeks, but you are going to miss South Carolina game, most likely if you're John Mateer. And most importantly, it doesn't look like you're going to have John Mateer for the Red River rivalry against Texas. And that is absolutely a massive game, as we all know, for the Sooners. So sad news there for John Mateer. Hope he can get back soon. Again, it's not expected that he's going to miss the rest of the season or anything, just about a month. So he should be back for the Alabama game, for example. And just based on the timeline they gave, it looked like maybe Ole Miss at the end of October would be the game that he would come back for. But a big hit there for the Sooners, no doubt.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate. But the thing is, you have Michael Hawkins Jr., who's played in the SEC.
Yes.
Yeah, and he played early on and got thrown into the fire with Jackson Arnold in the quarterback situation there last season. So you don't necessarily feel like you're just dead in the water. But it is going to be, a little bit more difficult without John Mateer being there. But also, if you're Auburn and you found out this information that he broke his hand in the first quarter, it kind of rubs you a little the wrong way because he still found a way to win the football game when he's out there with a broken freaking hand. it kind of just adds to it of, the officials kind of screwed you over. And then to find out this information of, this guy essentially needed surgery
Mm-hmm.
while playing a football game, still went out there and, threw for 271 on you. So it's going to be tough for Oklahoma. But like you said, to have the bye week, to follow that up with Kent State, South Carolina may not be as deadly as they once were. But the Red River rivalry does kind of take a little bit of a hit if it's Michael Hawkins Jr. versus Arch Manning again. But also, we hadn't seen the greatest of Arch Manning, so you could actually, this game might be 10-9, the final score, because of the way Texas's offense has been looking and then what Oklahoma's defense has been, been doing. As long as you keep them low, we should be okay.
Yeah, I think a big concern if you're Oklahoma is we kind of talked about it after the Auburn game, right? And I know a lot of that conversation just went into officiating, and I know some people were, John Mateer, he was fine, but he didn't look like the best quarterback in the country like everyone, said that he was going to be. And no, that was not the best game he's ever played of his life, but this is a fact. Oklahoma had 303 yards of offense in that game. He accounted for 300 of them. So, I mean, obviously, with him being out, you're going to have the running game's going to have to step up. Michael Hawkins is going to have to step up. Everybody else is going to have to be better in his absence because he essentially did a lot of things for them, right? When they needed to call a number, they were calling his number every single time. So that's going to be a tough thing to navigate there for the Sooners, but we'll see. I think, again, if you can get through that stretch, if you can get to the end of October – and let's say you lose to Texas, but you're sitting there at that point at what, 7-1, 6-1, whatever they would be. I think you feel pretty good with him coming back that you've still got everything ahead of you. And I think we all know, right? Let's say they go and lose to Texas. Let's say it's a close game. You lose to Texas without your starting quarterback. The committee's probably going to give you the benefit of the doubt at the end of the day when it comes to those types of situations. But a quick look at the Heisman odds now, because as I said, a lot of places, John Mateer was the favorite to win the Heisman after that game last week. So now you've got Fernando Mendoza, the Indiana quarterback, transfer from Cal. He has the best Heisman odds right now, according to BetMGM at least, but he's plus 650. Then after him, you've got Dante Moore and Carson Beck, the Oregon and Miami quarterbacks. They're plus 1,200. And then Gunnar Stockton after that at plus 1,400. And then you've got a bunch of just a collection of quarterbacks there after that. Marcel Reed, Joey Aguilar, Nussmeier, Josh Hoover, Jeremiah Smith. They're all kind of in that next group. But yeah, that definitely shaked a few things up there as it turns to the Heisman conversation moving forward. But there was some other big news in the world of college football yesterday, not involving anybody getting hurt. Somebody got paid, though. I guess that's one way we could look at it. And Damian had mentioned it earlier a little bit, but that is the fact that Oklahoma has fired head coach Mike Gundy. That was effective yesterday. So I think we all saw, if you watched or just looked at, the ESPN ticker or something at one point, went, man, Tulsa's beating Oklahoma State last Friday. Yeah, they were beating them, and then they actually did beat them for a full 60 minutes of a football game. And you knew once that happened, it probably wasn't going to be a long time before Mike Gundy was shown the door there, despite how long he had been the head coach up there at Oklahoma State. But he has lost 11 straight games against FBS teams.
Wow.
You remember the last time they beat an FBS team? Arkansas last season. That was it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so when you go over in your conference last year, and now you've started off this year, obviously not having a lot of success, and you lose to Tulsa, that's not gonna cut it. So Mike Gundy, though, he was the second longest tenured head coach in college football, behind Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, who's been there for like 100 years, it feels like. Actually, it's only 26, but it's been a long time. But Mike Gundy was there for 21 years, so that's certainly going to be a big change coming up there for the Oklahoma State program. He's 58 years old. He's going to be owed a $15 million buyout, and he was under contract for about 3.5 more years there at Oklahoma State. So we will see what direction they go in from here. I think, again, we all agree this season's probably just kind of a wash for them, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of opportunity, what kind of coach they could. Do you go after a young up-and-comer? Do you try to get somebody that's already more established? And what kind of commitment is the program going to make when it comes to NIL and all that stuff? Because we know that's very important.
Yeah, and I was listening to Three Man Front yesterday. Demetri Ravenos brought up a great point. It's, when you look at the history of Oklahoma State, one, you can't really tell it without Mike Gundy being a part somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Besides, of course, I mean, his running back was Barry Sanders too, so that helps as well.
Absolutely.
But when you look in totality, the only real success they've had is when Mike Gundy's been on that sideline.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a program that's you're not necessarily, are you rebuilding if you're going there? Because it's what Mike Gundy, at least early on, was able to do was kind of keep them afloat. You'll have an occasional just, and then it's, boom, they're winning the Big 12. Well, he only did it one time. But he's in contention of the Big 12,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's back to reality. So when you look at what the coaching pool is or what the coaching carousel could be, I don't know if an established head coach would want to come to Oklahoma State, but also you kind of look at the Big 12 as a whole as, okay, well, pretty much year in and year out I can compete. But also if you're an up-and-comer, it's, man, what can I do that hasn't already been accomplished in 20-something years, okay? What's the voice? Like, how quickly can I flip this roster around? Like, who wants to come to Stillwater? Like, I think it's a tougher job than people really realize. Because the first name that popped in my head was Alex Golish, and I kind of took a step back of, I actually think South Florida may be a better job than Oklahoma State right now. I know it's the American, but what you're building there in South Florida, you've knocked off an SEC school already. Like, you kind of got the ball rolling, but then, of course, you want to be in the big time, in the Big 12, where if you have success, you win a championship, there's no debating that you're going to be in the college football playoff consistently, or at least in the conversation consistently.
Well, and I think that would be, right, that would be your path, is if you want to go in the Big 12 and you think, okay, there's a clear path to, if I turn this program around, we can be in the college football playoff conversation pretty quickly, just by the nature of, I mean, that conference just kind of feels like it's generally wide open. I know Texas Tech looks really good right now, but I think just kind of planning out the future, it looks like it's going to be more wide open there potentially. But I do think, I think you probably go for a younger guy that wants to prove himself. And, also, $15 million buyout. I know a lot of SEC schools, for them, they would be like, it's only a $15 million buyout. That's great. But for Oklahoma State, are you willing to go and pay a guy top dollar to come and replace Mike Gundy while you're also paying this buyout? Probably not. You probably don't want to do that. But just a couple of names that have been thrown out there already to potentially, get a look for the Oklahoma State job. You have Texas A&M OC Colin Klein. Obviously, played college ball in Kansas State there in the Big 12, so he knows the conference and kind of that part of the country quite well. Nebraska offensive coordinator Dana Holgerson, that would certainly be an interesting one. I know a lot of people I saw a lot of this talk on social media yesterday, but Zach Robinson, he is a former Oklahoma State quarterback. He's now the OC for the Atlanta Falcons, who, if you watch the Atlanta Falcons, they just got shut out by the Panthers. So, just saying. You also have Purdue head coach Barry Odom, who we've seen in the SEC, but maybe if this is his first year in Purdue, so I don't know if he'd want to leave there. And then North Texas head coach Eric Morris, another name that's been brought up there for Oklahoma State. So that's kind of what's going on there with Mike Gundy as he is out at Oklahoma State, the third coach fired. Will Billy Napier be the next one? Well, we'll see.
Oh, I'm surprised you went Billy Napier. I thought it was another coach in the SEC that you pretty much written off.
Oh, I thought you were talking about somebody that was closer to us. Anyways, though, that is your college football kind of headlines around the rest of the country, everything going on in the SEC, the Big 12, and elsewhere. But we do want to take some time and break down this Georgia-Alabama game for you because it is just a matter of days away. And we have some thoughts. What are the keys to victory for Alabama? What are the keys to victory to Georgia? Are we going to see a Georgia defense that looks like the Tennessee game? Or are we going to see maybe a more typical Kirby Smart-looking defense? And what would that mean for Alabama? All that coming up next. We also want to get your thoughts on the courtesy GMC text line. Who's going to be the make-or-break player for Alabama and Georgia in their matchup this weekend? Who absolutely has to show up? And if they do that, their team is going to win. We want to hear from you. 205-834-9450 as we talk Alabama, Georgia next on Morning Jocks. 6:35. Appreciate you tuning us in here on Morning Jocks. Conrad and Damien here with you as it's time to break down a massive game coming up this weekend with Alabama and Georgia. We'll dive into Auburn and their trip to Texas A&M tomorrow. But want to start off with Alabama and Georgia. So both teams coming off of a bye last week. Obviously, you had Georgia and their narrow victory in overtime against Tennessee. The last time we saw them on the field, you saw Alabama taking down a Wisconsin team that you probably felt better about that outcome then than maybe now with what Maryland just did to Wisconsin. And let's just be honest, Maryland's they're Maryland. So that kind of tells you everything that you need to know. But anytime these two teams play, right, it's going to be. I feel like there's a lot of things you can kind of throw out the window. I'm not saying it's impossible because I would have said that it was impossible before the Florida State game, but I guess nothing should totally surprise you now with this Alabama football team. But this is a game you're not going to have to motivate anybody to get ready for this game. You're not going to have to worry about guys getting up for this game. It's Alabama versus Georgia. They know what's on the line. And particularly for Alabama, no, is it a win or your season is over game? No, it's not like some people, are treating it as. But it's very close to that. I don't think there's any mistaking that. And I think certainly the biggest difference is a 3-1 Alabama with this win and a 2-2 Alabama without this win is just from a confidence standpoint and from a, just a surface level analysis that everybody will give. It's okay. Well, I had Alabama at 3-1 anyways, because I thought they were going to lose to Georgia. So they're back on track in a lot of people's minds, right? But if you're 2-2, you're certainly going to be behind the 8 ball. And at that point, maybe you can slip up one more time in SEC play. But even that, would put you potentially on the outside looking in again at the college football playoff. So a lot on the line for Alabama this weekend. And I think going into this matchup, going on the road has been really difficult for Alabama. Under Kalen DeBoer, they're 2-6 on the road. That's a scary stat. That is not something you want to hear when you're going to play Georgia between the hedges.
Ouch.
But I mean, that's the reality. Now, the good news, well, I guess it's good news, but then it turns into more bad news. But the good news is you are 1-1 on the road against ranked teams. That just means that you're 1-5 against not. But anyways, besides that, you are 1-1 on the road against ranked teams because you look at last year, you lost to Tennessee, but you whopped LSU. I mean, just absolutely dismantled them last year. So maybe you look at that and go, okay, well, we went into Death Valley. We did what we did to LSU last year. But I certainly don't think that that's going to be what happens against Georgia. I don't think you're going to have that type of a beatdown in Athens this Saturday. But I think for Alabama going into this game, right, something that you're going to have to prove that you haven't been able to do, and this goes back to the end of the Nick Saban days, right? They have been such an undisciplined team for such a long time, and going on the road, and I somebody brought this up. I'm trying to remember who it was. But if you look at Georgia last 2 weeks ago when they went and played Tennessee on the road, they didn't have a single false start on the road in Neyland Stadium against Tennessee. That's a pretty impressive stat when you consider how volatile that crowd was.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Alabama has to go and not have a single false start. That'd be great, obviously, against Georgia. But I think you even just look at the totality of the game. Can you have less penalties at the end of the game than Georgia has? Because that's something that Alabama hasn't done under Kalen DeBoer, is have less penalties than their opponent at the end of the game. Even the ULM game, you won by 70 whatever points. You had more penalties than ULM in that game. Like, that is something that's going to have to change going into this game if you're Alabama. You're going to have to be a disciplined football team, and that's going to start up front. Because if you start getting Ty Simpson behind the sticks, right, you're going to start – that's when you can start to see the cracks form, I think. You start to feel the pressure a little bit more. And then when it's obvious passing situations, right, you're just going to be at a disadvantage if you're Ty Simpson. So you have to be disciplined if you're Alabama. You're going to have to find some semblance of a run game. Now, do I think that they're going to hand it off to Jam Miller 30 times in this game and he's going to run for 100 yards plus? No, I don't. I think you're going to have to get creative. I think you're going to have to get Ty Simpson to be a point of emphasis in the run game, or at least a threat, right? You have to have that threat of him in the run game. I think Jam Miller can be effective. I think we've seen enough from Kevin Riley to know that that's a guy that needs to get his touches as well. But I wonder, what do you do with Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and some of these other guys? Do you get them involved, whether it's with jet sweeps or different things you can do with them in the backfield to kind of get some, and I guess, some of those technically are passing yards, but you get what I'm saying, right? Getting yards out of the backfield and finding creative ways to do so. Because the thing I'm most confident about in this game for Alabama is the passing game. Because I think what you saw from Tennessee, I think Alabama can go and kind of tear this secondary up for a lot of the day. But I also think that defensively for Alabama, do you have confidence that you can then stop Georgia if you're able to have that success on the offensive side of the ball? So I think that's kind of where I'm at with a lot of this matchup. I think for Alabama defensively, that defensive line, you're going to have to make Georgia one-dimensional, right? If Gunnar Stockton's out there making throws all day like he did at the end of the Tennessee game, I don't think Alabama wins this football game. But if you're able to make them a little bit one-dimensional, put pressure on Gunnar Stockton, and Alabama's been really, really good at getting pressure on guys, just not finishing with sacks, then I think you can have, a clear path to victory there if you're Alabama. But those are going to be very difficult things to do. I just think if you look at the grand, kind of the 30,000-foot view of this game, those are the most important factors when I look at how this game is going to play out on Saturday.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I look at Alabama's defense, and that would be the biggest challenge is, can you make Georgia one-dimensional? Can you actually – we saw a few passes against Tennessee with Gunnar Stockton where he was off target. Like, he was not clicking and when they needed him to. The biggest question mark is that defensive line for Alabama. Like you said, can you get him to the ground? Because Gunnar Stockton can use his legs. He's shown that he can be a threat. The play breaks down to take off. What are your linebackers going to do when they have him in space? That's going to be the key. I think offensively for Alabama is keep Ty Simpson upright and comfortable. Because I think going back, when you watch Florida State, the pressure that was on him and his first start, a lot of factors played into that. Florida State is a lot better than they have been, well, they were last year. But when you look at how comfortable he looks in this offense the past two games with Wisconsin and Louisiana and Monroe, he's looked dialed in. Like, he looks and he feels the part of being QB1. Like, it's his team. He is the engine that keeps this thing rolling. So can you keep him comfortable? And I expect big things from the receiver position. What is Jeremy Bernard going to do this game that's going to continue to put him in the conversation of he actually may be the best receiver that you have on the roster right now? Because one thing I actually talked to me, John, and Ryan were talking about this yesterday, and I had a conversation of what's the biggest question mark I have about just the receiver play across the board. And I was like, well, when I look at Jeremy Bernard, he's kind of cut from the old cloth of, I got to do what I have to do in this route in order to be open. Because when you see him, he looks like he's created 3 or 4 yards of separation every time he catches the ball because he continues to work at his craft. Not to say that Ryan Williams, and we actually brought up Cam Coleman too, I said they can't continue to feel like they can out-athlete everybody. There are some nuances within running routes and getting open, catching contested passes, got things that are hitting you right in the hands. You've got to catch it.
Yep,
you've got to catch it because your opportunities are very few when it comes to the passing game. But there's a lot of things that you can't control. But when you have those moments where you basically are standing in the middle of the goalpost and the ball hits you in the hands and you drop it, that's on you. Like, that is 100% on the receiver. Ty Simpson couldn't have put it in a better spot. It hits you right in the hands. So I think that the receiving core for Alabama has to take those steps because we never had those conversations of the Devontae Smiths, the Jalen Waddles, Jerry Jeudy's, Amari Coopers, Calvin Ridley's of the world, where if you put the ball anywhere around them, it was theirs. There was no question about it. You either had to have a defensive player to make a great play or it was a bad pass and it sails over the head. But if you put it anywhere around them, they were catching and getting yards afterwards. But I think what you see with Jeremy Bernard and what his work ethic and the things that he's really starting to instill in this receiver room are going to have to pay dividends on Saturday because he can't do it by himself. He's going to need the help of, the Isaiah Hortons of the world. You've seen Ryan Williams at times, and it felt like Wisconsin was kind of finally we're starting to get back into what we needed to see. So I put a lot of emphasis on the receiving core for Alabama of if you can't really get the running game going, now Jam Miller coming back does help that, but it's up to them to really step up and make plays for their quarterback and to ensure that he continues on the trend that he's been going on these past couple weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be such a tricky situation for Even going against Florida State, this is the first time you've gone on the road, and it's I would say going to be an even more hostile environment than what you saw down there in Doak Campbell when you started off the season. If you're Alabama, so how much have you grown since then? Right? Has Ty Simpson can he is he the kind of guy that takes that first experience and goes, okay, now I'm good, right? Like that truly was a throw to the fire moment for a lot of the team, and they're going to bounce back and respond the right way. Again, I think the question that so many people are going to have is Alabama just hasn't been the same team on the road the last couple of years, and that's going to have to change on Saturday if you want to have an opportunity to win this game and to beat a Georgia team that has not lost their last 33 games at home. That's the other part of this. I know it's Georgia and Alabama, and we can say, well, Alabama's 9-1 the last 10 games against Georgia. They absolutely are. Georgia also hasn't lost a home game there since what, 2019? I mean, that is a long, long time ago. So there's a lot of things that are going to factor into this game, and we'll talk more about it again over the next couple of days. But that's just kind of our thoughts, our early breakdown, what we think is going to be important in this matchup coming up on Saturday. And a lot of you chiming in on the courtesy GMC text line with some of your thoughts on Alabama and Georgia as well. So we'll continue the conversation, some of our takeaways, some of your thoughts as well on the big one coming up this weekend, Alabama and Georgia. Georgia, a 2.5-point favorite at home. So Vegas showing a little more love to Alabama here in the last couple of days. Does that change your opinions? We'll get your thoughts next on Morning Jocks. Appreciate you tuning in to Morning Jocks here on your Wednesday morning. Conrad and Damian here for a few more moments before we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning, as they will, I'm sure, continue the conversation about Alabama and Georgia, as well as the other big matchups around the SEC coming up this weekend. But we want to get to your text, as we do each and every morning here on the Courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450, because we appreciate all the interaction and we love hearing the thoughts from our wonderful listeners here on JOX. So this text comes in: how does the transfer portal work for Oklahoma State players? You got 30 days. You can go in the portal right now if you want to. You got 30 days, though.
But if you look at their roster, no disrespect. It's like, I don't think there's many.
I think I'd play out the season if I was them, and then maybe
some tape.
I'll say try to build some value for yourself and then go in the actual portal at the end of the year. Jimmy chimes in. He says, concerning Oklahoma State, I think Jimbo would be a great fit as a head coach there. Maybe so. We'll see. We know he wants to get back into coaching. Let's see. Bobby says, Lane Kiffin's daughter announcing she's dating Whit Weeks the week of the LSU Ole Miss game is a whole nother level of gamesmanship.
Hey, you heard, Lane. Take the over.
Yeah, it's something. Let's see. We have this text rolls in on the Alabama-Georgia game. It says, it's been like 4 years since Georgia's lost at home. Wow, 2019, I was thinking about picking Alabama until I saw that stat. Then they also add Caden Proctor is going to be exposed again. Maybe so. Alabama offensive line is going to have to be excellent. However, I will say I think the last few years when you've said, man, this Alabama offensive line is going to have to have a big performance, it's typically been against Georgia, and they've delivered in those moments. So we'll see if this year will be the same there for Alabama. This one says, is Don headed to College Station? He should. Those just seem like his kind of people.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's doing that. Let's see. It says, I think Georgia has a hard time scoring on Saturday. The game's going to come down to coaching and motivation. And look, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. And I'm not, saying this like, oh, you're wrong, because who knows what this game's going to look like. I almost feel like deep down this is going to be a higher scoring game than anything. And I think it's because, I don't know. I just have question marks about the Georgia secondary. I have questions about Alabama's ability to stop the run. I saw a little something from Gunnar Stockton against Tennessee that I wasn't sure he had. And, I mean, just the way that Ty Simpson's playing, I feel like both of these teams I feel like we're going to see some points on Saturday. But, of course, since I'm saying that, it's going to be, 14-13 kind of game or something like that.
Fist fight.
Yeah. We'll see. See, this text says Alabama's going to get boat raced. O-line is fat, slow, and soft. Okay. Let's see. Randy chimes in. He says, my hot take is the next Arkansas coach is going to be Gus Malzahn. Okay.
Yeah, in 2030, because Sam Pittman's finishing out this year and next year.
And the next 4?
Yeah, absolutely.
According to you? Okay.
Hope so.
Let's see. This one comes in. JK from T-Town says, Georgia game becomes the proving ground for Ty Simpson. I think he shreds the Georgia secondary. I think again, that's probably the part I feel the best about in this game for Alabama going in, is their ability to move the ball through the air. It's just going to be, again, can you do that without turning the ball over? Because that's another thing like we talked about with Auburn last week that they haven't done yet. So is that going to happen again? Conrad Van Chaos says, I felt really good about Alabama this Saturday, but then we saw how bad Wisconsin really is against Maryland. Fair. I think there's certainly a lot of people that feel that way. And we'll wrap up with Bama Hater. He says, is Lil Lugnut going to join Mailman and the Witness Protection Program after Saturday? And will y'all finally start giving Vanderbilt and other SEC teams their well-deserved airtime instead of your usual suspects? Well, Bama Hater, we do a radio show in Alabama, so that's kind of how it works. Appreciate y'all joining us. We're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. McElroy and Kubik in the morning. They are next.